Hey Floss Tube, welcome back. This is my 103rd Floss Tube video, and I'm excited to share with you what I've been working on. But first of all, I want to welcome you. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I hope that you enjoy the things that I have to share with you. And if you are returning, thank you for coming back and watching my videos. I really appreciate it. It's been quite a while since my last video. In fact, I just looked it up this morning, and it has been almost 2 months since my last video. And things have just been kind of crazy for me these past couple of months. I mentioned in my last video that things were really busy at work, and that I thought things were coming to an end. Well, things were coming to an end. I just wasn't quite sure what end they were coming to. Since that time, we had several problems that we had found that required fixing, and at the time things just got really busy for me. I had people waiting for me to finish my part of the project so that we could make sure that everything was okay. And I ended up for like 2 or 3 weeks just eating, drinking, and sleeping work. I'd come home from work, eat dinner, and then immediately go back to work and work until late at night. And I did that for a couple of weeks. It was really crazy, but things have finally settled down. We finished our project this week. It feels really good to have it out the door and not to be facing the deadline that we were facing. We were late making the deadline, but things are going to be okay. So with all of that work, there was absolutely no time to do any cross-stitching at all. And so I haven't really done a lot of cross-stitching. I do have stuff to show you, but my progress isn't as significant as it has been in the past because of that. The other thing that happened is we had a family reunion in the beginning of August, and so we were out of town for another week, and I ended up not cross-stitching during that time just because there was no way I was going to be able to cross-stitch. I did do a lot of knitting though, so I have some pretty significant knitting progress to share with you. So we'll get to all of that, but first of all, I just want to respond to a couple of questions that were left since my last video. So first of all, Kim's Niche asked me if I frame my own pieces, and if so, what do I use to place behind my stitch piece? I do not frame my own pieces. This may sound a little bit strange, but I just do not have the patience to do that. When I start working on stuff like that, I just don't have the patience to do it. So I have never really, well, I have framed one piece a long time ago, but I don't have the patience to try to get everything lined up straight and make it look good. So I don't frame my own pieces. WW Jackie asked me about Winter Garden, which is a piece that I stitched. It's been, I think, maybe a couple of years since I finished Winter Garden. This was a design by the Drawn Thread, and I have it here to show it to you. I just go so you can see what I'm talking about. This is a design by the Drawn Thread. It's part of a series. There's a garden for each season. This is the Winter Garden. And I stitched this quite a while ago. It is cross stitch and a lot of specialty stitches. Almost all of the plants on either side of the house are stitched with a specific specialty stitch. And I really enjoyed stitching this. So Jackie asked me if I used the silks that are charted in the design, and I did. I didn't use cotton floss. This is with silk. and she said she made the comment that she's thinking about using DMC or cotton because the silks can be pretty expensive. And yes, if you buy all of the silk, it will be expensive, but I didn't do that. The Drawn Thread website sells kits, and I bought this as a kit from her website, and that is not as expensive because she doesn't send you whole skeins of silk. She sends you enough silk to be able to stitch the piece, and so that's not quite as prohibitive. It's actually pretty reasonably priced. So Jackie, if you want to try stitching with the silks, I would suggest that you check out her website. That's the Drawn Thread, and that would be a good alternative for you. Okay, so what have I been working on? Let's first of all talk about my knitting. When I did my last video, I was finishing up the Afghan that I was knitting for my daughter, and I mentioned that I had a deadline. My deadline was a couple of weeks after I filmed that video, and I made my deadline. I finished the Afghan. I don't have it here with me. It is with my daughter. She is back up in Utah going to school. I do have a picture that I took. It's not very good. I've never been really good at taking pictures of knitted stuff. So I will show you a picture of what it looks like, just so you can kind of see how it turned out. I'm really happy with how it turned out. The black border that is knitted around it, that just kind of finished it all off. It made it look really good. It made all those bright colors pop. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. My daughter loves it, and of course she took it to Utah with her. So I don't know how much she's using it, or if it's in her closet, or if it's actually on her bed. But she can't tell me I've never made her an Afghan now. So that is done. And then I started something else. I started a new project. And this is the project that I took with me when we went for our family reunion. And it's actually a shawl. This is the Find Your Fade shawl, which I found on the Knit Picks website, but I have since found out that this is, in the knitting community, this is a pretty popular shawl that people have knit in the past. It's an asymmetric triangular shawl that is knit. It basically fades from one color to another, and I found basically a combination of colors on the Knit Picks website that I really liked, and so that's what I'm doing. I don't know who I'm knitting this shawl for because I'm not really into wearing shawls myself. Arizona's a little bit too warm for shawls in the first place, so we'll see. When it's finished, I'll decide what I'm doing. But the name of the color, the fade, I guess you'd call it, that I bought is Oceania. Can't believe I don't know how to pronounce that. But it's basically green, fading from green to a dark blue. And it's all knit with Stroll sock yarn. Some of it is they're hand-painted stock yarn, and some of it is tonal. So I started out with this color. This is Base Camp, which is basically light and dark greens. It's a hand-painted, and then it transitions to this color, which is called Eucalyptus. It's like light green. A Eucalyptus tonal, this is tonal. And then from Eucalyptus, it transitions to this color, which is light blues and greens. I didn't realize that there were greens in here until I actually started knitting with it. Here in the ball, it just looks like it's blues, but there's actually greens in here. This is Pluto hand painted stroll, and then it switches to this color. This is Frozen Tonal, this is more of a light bluish green color. And then it switches to this color. This is the color I'm currently knitting with. This is called Northern Lights hand painted. This is blues and greens and purples. And then it's going to switch up to this color. This is called Orbit. Tonal, I think this is tonal, this is a dark blue, and it looks like there might be some black in here as well. And then it's going to finish off with this. This is Inverness, which is dark blues. It looks like there might be some dark green in here also. And I think this is tonal also. So. And I've actually been knitting on this quite a bit. I found that it's easier. It feels easier for me to pick this up and start knitting than it is to get out all of my cross stitch stuff and start stitching. I've also been driven to get to the next section with the next color change so I can see what that next color is going to look like. So here it is. I'll try to show it to you. So you can see it starts out down here at this point with the base camp, and then it's basically a great big huge triangle. So you can see we have base camp down here. Here's the eucalyptus orbit, and then you can see the frozen, and now I'm on the Northern Lights. And I had more done, but this morning I found a drop stitch that I couldn't, I started to try to pick it back up. It had dropped down 3 or 4 rows, and I tried to pick it up, and I was just distorting everything. So I took out 5 or 6 rows. So just a minute. You gotta love this. I need point protectors on my needles. Okay, there we go. I saved it. Okay, so this is what it looks like so far. You can see I've made it past. So the way it works is you're increasing 2 stitches, one on either side, every other row, and then every other row you're also doing a double decrease in the middle, and so that makes this big narrow triangle that starts up here, and then you get to a point where you stop increasing on one side, and so now one side is getting closer to the center, and the other side continues to increase. So eventually this is going to look like a big triangle like this. So you can see I've hit that corner, and now I'm working towards towards the point where there's no stitches on this side of the center. So right now it doesn't look like it's getting any closer, but it is. Yeah. So I've really enjoyed working on it. Like I said, I'm drawn to get to the next place where the color changes so that I can see what the new color is going to look like and how it's going to look compared to the color that I just finished. I've actually been really, I understand the color transitions now that I didn't see when I was just looking at the colors in the skeins. You can see like this green there's green, this same green color down here, and also up here in the orbit, and then there is some of the same blues in here that are down here in this. and there's more of this this light blue color up in the northern lights. So it really does look like it's fading from one color to another. So to be honest, this has taken more of my attention than stitching has. Okay, so I have 4 things that I have worked on that I'm going to show you. Like I say, 4 things, but not a lot of progress on some of them. Before we do that, I'll show you my graph that kind of tells the story of what's happened to me the last couple months. This is my stitch trend. I've shown you this many times before, and you can see the number of days that I've stitched has dropped off dramatically, and the number of stitches that I'm actually putting in has also dropped off. And I'm kind of in a slump, to be honest. I've come to the realization, well, I've decided I have too many whips. And that has kind of started to discourage me a little bit. And one of the pieces that I worked on, I realized that I'd only been stitching it on it. I started it a year ago, and I haven't made a whole lot of progress. And I look at that, and it's a big piece, and I'm thinking, I'm never going to finish this because I have so many whips, and it's just taken me so long to get through my rotation. And my rotation is I'm still kind of working on it, but I haven't been really consistent in working on things for a week and making good progress in that week because I haven't had a lot of time to stitch anyway. And so there's that. I have things that I'll talk about this as I go through my projects. There are things that are irritating me about these projects and making me so I don't want to stitch. When I look at everything that I have, I'm kind of tired of it. And so I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to get me back into stitching again, or out of my slump, I guess. So that's kind of where I am. I'm hoping that by making this video, this will kind of get me kick-started again. I'm trying to think of what I can do. I am seriously considering coming down with 3 or 4 focus pieces. Some of them big, like half big pieces that are taking a long time, and half small pieces, maybe a distribution of my older projects versus my newer projects so that there's kind of a variety in there. And, just concentrating on 4 projects with a couple that are getting closer to being able to be finished. I do have that. I do have some projects that I think wouldn't take too long to finish, just to try to get the number of projects I'm working on down, because I think that's a problem. And like I say, everything I look at just doesn't really even excite me to stitch. So anyway, so I'll show you what I've been working on. I have spent a lot of time on this, and I'm happy I've made a lot of progress on this project, and this is the project that I said I want to work on till I finish. So this is the Amid Amish Life. You can see it back here. It's pictured as 3 separate projects, and I am stitching it all as one. It was originally published in Cross Stitch and Country Crafts in 1987. I think it was the March, May, and July issues of Cross Stitch Country Crafts 1987. It is now in this book. It is available as a separate leaflet. It's kind of hard to find, but there are several different things you can look for. I think the magazines are probably the easiest to find. This book is now difficult to find. I'll show you what it looked like the last time you saw it. And I am stitching this on 25 count Wedgewood Lugana, stitching because it's 25 count and I want to have good coverage. I'm stitching with 3 strands of floss with the called for DMC. And I basically have stitched this the equivalent of about 2 weeks since you last saw it. And I think I've got a couple of diagonals done since you last saw it. So this is what it looks like now. So looking here, you can see I finished. I was still working on the buggy. I finished the buggy now, and the barn is really starting to take shape here. We're seeing a lot more of the background, and we are getting a lot of this garden down here. So right here is the boundary between the second and third design. This is visiting the neighbors. This is tending the garden. So you can see I've got a lot more of the garden. I've got 2 people stitched. There's another person here that's stitched. There's a man with a wheelbarrow that goes here. So I'm starting to see that. I am really close to finishing. Let's see here. You have 1 page, and then the center design, visiting the neighbors, is actually 2 pages. It's actually 1 page and then this little strip of another page. I'm actually just about finished with the first page of this design, so I'm getting close to finishing the second page, and of course, tending the garden is another page. So I've actually really made some good progress. This garden down here, this has to be the most complicated part of the entire design. There are a lot of different colors in here. This is pretty confetti heavy. So it's like I zoom through the diagonal and then I hit the garden. It takes me like 3 days to make it down through the garden, just because it's so crazy. And that's kind of what has been irritating me, is I get to the garden and I don't want to start stitching it again. But it's really turning out good. I mean, there's rewards here. I get through another diagonal and it looks really good. So that helps. So I'll give you a little bit closer look. Yeah, you can see all of these rows of plants and flowers are pretty crazy. This field back here, you can see you've got a little haystack right there. That's the first of many. Oh, the other thing to say is this diagonal here. When I finish this diagonal, I will have hit this corner, which is really good. That means that my diagonals are going to start to shrink, which is also encouraging. So that's another good thing, is I'm looking forward to hitting this corner down here. Then it'll really feel like I'm on the downward slope to finishing that. According to my spreadsheets, I have about 4 more weeks of stitching. About 4 more weeks worth of stitching to finish the cross stitching. And then there's a lot of back stitching. I have not done any back stitching. So I think I'm looking at about a month of back stitching after I finish all the cross stitch. But yeah, that's a mid-Amish life. And like I say, this is the one piece that I've actually made some pretty good progress on, that I'm really happy with. Okay. So there's that. Okay. The next piece that I have worked on, and this one I have worked on I got a good week of work on this one. This is Sunshine and Shadows by Barbara and Cheryl. I think this is the piece that I said I was going to work on the last time I talked to you. I really like this piece. I like the way the light plays through here. Let's see. So I'll show you what it looked like the last time you saw it. This was one of my mania starts in 2020. And I am stitching on 32 count Ivory Lugana, stitching with the called for DMC 2 strands of floss. This is what it looks like now. So this is the piece that I said I've been working on this a year, and I've only got like this corner. And then the last year, this was the third time I actually worked on it, and just the mathematics kind of hit me of how long it's going to take to do this if I only stitch on it 2 or 3 times a year. So I want to get to the point where I can concentrate on this a little bit more. I really like how it's turning out. You can see, so this basically flower bed that goes along the side of the house is here. This is the house. And this is a picket fence that runs across the yard. So you're kind of seeing that. You're kind of starting to see the picket fence. This walkway is also, I'm getting close down here. I'm getting close to the end of this walkway, and then I'll be over in yard on the other side of the brick walkway. So it doesn't look like a whole lot, but it's starting to look a lot more like there's a lot more diverse colors in here than there were. And I'm really liking how this is looking so far, and I look forward to seeing more of the house. Okay, so that is Sunshine and Shadows by Grasped by Barbara and Cheryl. And then 2 other projects. I thought English Garden Sampler. This is by Teresa Wentzler. I have really enjoyed working on this, and I thought that I would, when I pulled this out, I thought, oh, this will be really good. I'll really enjoy working on this. And so I'll show you what it looked like the last time you saw it. This is the 3rd time I've worked on this piece also. And it is, I'm stitching this on 32 count Flax Belfast Linen with the called for DMC 2 strands. This looks, when I was working on this, I don't know if it's because I've been working on a mid-Amish life, this 25 count, but it just looked really small to me this time. And I actually was like, this can't be 32 count. This seems too small to be 32 count. I actually counted my threads to make sure it was 32 count and that I hadn't accidentally got 40 count. But this is what it looks like now. And I'm happy with what I was able to accomplish, but the thing that was irritating me on this is this band. This band is just very monotonous. You know, it's the same thing over and over again, and it just doesn't seem to be giving me the satisfaction of stitching it. So I've been working on the Roman numerals underneath, and we're doing this little by little to try to get to the other side. I was hoping to make it to the other side, but I didn't make it. Actually, I'm actually a lot closer than, I'm actually pretty close. I'm past the halfway mark. This is 7, this is 8, even I've got one more eye to stitch to make this 8. So 9 and 10, there's only 2 more numbers to stitch, and then this comes over to here. So I'm actually on the downhill side of that band, and the next time I pick it up, I will have finished that band, and that will be good because then I can start working on more of the border. I actually don't mind stitching the leaves. I thought I would, but I really enjoyed stitching the border so far. So, but yeah, I've got a pretty good start on this. So this is English Cottage Sampler by Teresa Wentzler. I may have said English Garden Sampler before. That was a piece of hers that I finished stitching last year. But yeah, I'm really happy with that. I'm happy with what I was able to accomplish. And this one, I'm almost embarrassed to show you this, but I want to talk about it a little bit. At the beginning of this week, I pulled out Borrett. This is a design by Hands Across the Sea samplers. When I saw this, I just had to stitch it. I really liked the way it looked. It's stitched reversibly, so it's basically a challenge that I was looking forward to stitching. When I first started this, I got this top band finish, and then I started working on this, and I didn't know how to turn this diagonal corner. So I got a book, Autopsy of the Montenegrin Stitch. This is all Montenegrin stitch in here. Well, mostly. There's some satin stitch, and the yellows here is satin stitch, but everything else is stitched in Montenegrin stitch. And I got a book to tell me how to transition 90 degrees from one diagonal to another, so that I could figure out how to do that. And I have my book. I got my book out already, and I was like, I'm excited. I'm going to tackle this. And then everything just kind of fell apart. So this is all I was able to. All I stitched this last week is just this little heart and this. And basically, what happened is I was having a hard time counting Montenegrin stitch. That's the biggest challenge I think with it, is figuring out how to count it. I was having a hard time counting, and I actually got down and came back up and realized that I had gone too far down in the diagonal before I turned back up. So I took everything back out, and I thought, well, I'm going to stitch the running stitch that's on the inside. That'll help me count the outside. And I got down to turn the diagonal, and with the diagonals that are in the book and the diagonals that are, with the way the turning of the diagonal is documented, I couldn't do it. And that is because, I'll show you this. I think I can do this. So there is a diagram here that says merging diagonals that tells you how to change from one diagonal to another. And this a similar diagram is in the Autopsy of the Montenegrin Stitch. And what you can see here is there's no point here. And you have to turn on a point. You have to have a point down there. This is too wide to make the turn in the diagram that's in there. This is not correct. And there's not a diagram in here to tell you how to turn with a point. This only tells you how to turn with a stitch. So I was like really lost, and I started looking through the Montenegrin stitch book, and I think I mentioned this before. It documents two different types of Montenegrin stitch. It documents what it calls IX Montenegrin stitch, and that's because on the back, when you stitch IX, it looks like X's that are separated by a vertical bar. And there's another Montenegrin stitch that it calls square Montenegrin stitch, and that's because on the back, when you stitch that, it looks like squares. It looks like this. If you can see, there's little squares right next to each other. And that book has merging diagonals with a point on the square Montenegrin stitch, but not on the IX Montenegrin stitch. I know it can be done with the IX because this is the center fold of this book. This is the way it looks in the front. This is the way it looks on the back. If you look on the back, you can tell that this is all stitched in IX Montenegrin stitch, and she did stitch a point, but I don't know how to do that. I could probably figure it out, I guess. but I don't want to go through the hassle of trying to figure out how to do it without a diagram. So as you can see, I figured out how to make the point with the square Montenegrin stitch. So I guess I'm going to be stitching square Montenegrin stitch for all of this instead of IX. But that brings up another problem, and that is if you stitch square Montenegrin stitch, you really can't end your threads on the back. You've got to bring them forward and end them underneath the stitches on the front. Otherwise, you'll have these empty. You'll be able to see your threads on the back if you don't do if you try to bring them in the back. And I wasn't really enjoying doing that here. So that's one other thing I've got to work through is figuring out the best way to keep my threads on the front and make that happen and bury them on the front. And I think I've worked out in my mind how to do it, but I just didn't feel like working on this. So this is only a couple of days worth of work, and as you see, I didn't really accomplish all that much. So this is going to go away, and one day I'm gonna tackle this again. I'm not gonna. Well, I guess what I'm saying is this probably won't be one of my focus pieces. But yeah, what I did stitch, I do like. Yeah, and this week I've been knitting, just because it felt easier to pull out my knitting and start knitting than to pull this out and try to figure this out. So that's basically what happened this week. So anyway, as I look at the diagrams for doing this, the other challenge that I have to face that I really didn't want to this week is I have to figure out how to work through things. How to work through how to chart a path through the Montenegrin stitch, because you've got stitches that start up here and they just kind of wind all the way around the place. And there are some places where I look at it and it's like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to have to end off and start. There are places where I think I'm going to have to do that. And I just wasn't in the mood to try to figure that out. So that's basically what happened. Maybe one day when I'm enjoying my stitching more, it'll be something that I'll be willing to tackle. So anyway, that is what I've been working on this week, and I've kind of already told you my plans. I would kind of like to continue to focus on a mid-Amish life and get through the rest of the pieces that I have left in my rotation. That would be all of the pieces that I started last May. I would like to get, this is what I'm thinking. I may not do this, but I'm thinking right now I'm going to continue to focus on a mid-Amish life and work through the pieces that I started in May so that I get to the end of my rotation. And then I think I'm going to decide on 3 or 4 pieces that are going to be focus pieces to try to get some finishes. I need to get my whip count down a little bit so that I don't feel quite so overwhelmed, I guess is the word to say. So anyway, I guess you can follow me on Instagram and see what I decide to do, see how things go. I am at blitstitch on Instagram, where I post daily progress. It hasn't been so daily recently, but hopefully it will be in the next few weeks. Anyway, thank you for staying. Thank you for watching my videos. As always, if you haven't, feel free to subscribe to my channel. And that will make it so that you can be notified if when I post new videos. Feel free to like this video if you've enjoyed it, and also I always love hearing from you and would be glad to answer any questions that you have for me. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I hope that you have a great week and a great month, and we will talk to you later. Goodbye.